but you're going to wait until the interest rates drop. Well, I got news for you. When the interest rates drop, be prepared for a whole bunch of more buyers to come in.
The market right now, is it a buyer's market or is it a seller's market right now?
The seller's market is when prices are high and they're going to get multiple offers. A buyer's market is when prices are low and you're going to be able to get a deal.
Is this a good time to buy?
It's definitely a good time to buy if you are...
Welcome to Homeschool. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Mary D. Bryant.
And I'm Carlton Puckett. And here to my left, we have Keven Stirdivant. He is a real estate extraordinaire. He is going to educate us today on everything that's real estate and why it's important to have a good realtor on your team. Keven, thank you for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
So Keven, you are with Case Real Estate. So how did you get started? Tell us a little bit about yourself. We're so excited to have you with us today.
So I've been in real estate since 2000, my first year out of high school. I got the news that I was going to be a father in my senior year of high school and had to figure something out quick.
Life changes.
Yes.
And so fast forward, I'm the owner, founder of Case Real Estate. We've now expanded into multiple cities. We have about 100 agents.
Fantastic.
Oh, wow.
And, my wife and I, real estate is our passion. We invest in real estate all over the place.
You have five children?
I have 5 kids. And from here to Montana and everywhere else, we're always looking for how real estate can be the catalyst to creating ultimate financial freedom.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Well, we have a ton of questions to ask you today.
Yes.
Awesome.
So one of the first questions is, of course, what does a realtor do?
Yes. So a realtor's job on the buyer side is to really a couple things. One is to help a buyer discover what it is that they're looking for, right? And in the most simplest way to put it, what's the city? And I think if you kind of look at it in a bit more of a broad way, understand their why.
Right.
Right? Like what is your why?
Right.
Like I think a really good realtor is more of a consultant and a coach than a salesperson.
Absolutely.
Because the reality is you can't sell a house, right? Like a buyer has to be interested in that house. It has to fit the buyer's needs.
Right.
But there's no, you should really buy. No, it's taking the consultative coach approach first before you show them anything, and imagine that your buyer is an all-star player and you got to help them achieve the goal. So the question is, first and foremost, what is the goal and why? And step one, you really have to start with what can you afford?
Right.
Because there's a big difference if you can afford $500,000 and $5 million or $50 million. That opens up a lot. So step one is, what can you afford?
Let me ask the question. How often do you get a situation where you have to tell a borrower, this is just too much house? Maybe you don't need this much or something along those lines. Do you ever have to do something like that?
Not really, because a buyer needs to understand what they can afford, right? It's not for me to decide if it's too much house or too little house. I think it goes back again to not rushing the process and just showing them something. Like, you shouldn't even be in a house that's too much house in the first place. Right. You should have the game plan aligned before you've even looked at anything.
Well, I think this is where the question of what is the step-by-step process that buyer needs to take. So step number one would be looking at themselves financially and saying, hey, am I ready to do this? Because some of those steps, as we know, it may take them 1 to 6 months to actually get prepared for them to even make the phone call to you or to us as a lender, or years.
I've had deals with buyers take years.
Yeah.
Like a lot of my clientele is in the action sports, art world, creative world, artists, graphic designers, musicians. Their money can fluctuate a lot. It can be feast or famine.
Yeah.
I have friends who have made millions of dollars one year as an artist, and then $200,000 the next year. And So, I think it's a process of, number one, you being comfortable with even the exploration. I think what can stop a buyer from even pursuing it is the fear of the unknown and not knowing who to talk to.
Right.
So even before you talk to a realtor, I really won't engage with a buyer much until they've talked to a lender, because I personally I don't look at their tax returns. I don't look at their credit. I don't look at their income. I don't need to know that.
Yeah.
I just need to know, what can you afford? And the person who's going to help you figure that out is a qualified Jedi lender.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, with that being said, so once they go to the lender and they get approved for however much they can afford, then they, at that point in time, they reach out to you.
Yes.
And now, do they need to tell you, the areas that they're looking in, or if they just have to tell you what type of home they're looking for, and then you basically are able to kind of show them what's available out there?
Yeah, exactly. I think once they have the conversation with the lender, there's going to be a lot of discoveries, right? And I do think that it's important to look at the realtor as the person that you recommend as a lender. You don't have to choose the lender that the realtor recommends, but if you trust your realtor, you should also trust who they recommend, because there's a relationship there, there's a skill set there, there's a reason why the realtor trusts a certain lender.
Well, there's the education and the knowledge, and just like we rely on you for location and school, let's say school systems and different things like that. When it comes to the property, you're relying on us to make sure, as their lender, that we've gone through that pre-approval process so that they are qualified at whatever home, whether it's the 500,000 or the 5 million, as you were saying.
Exactly. If somebody refers a buyer to me, right, and I sell a home, and next to that home is a sober living house or a child predator, and I did not do the research, I did not look on the Megan's Law website to find out, right? I sold them a home that has a cracked foundation, and I didn't properly align my buyer with the inspector to discover these certain things, it's going to come back on me. If I refer my buyer to a lender who gave them an interest rate that this other person could have beaten, and I didn't, whose fault is that referral? So the real estate agent needs to have all of the best referrals, from inspector to lender, right, to attorney, all to life coach, marriage therapist.
With that being said, like, for a first-time home buyer, should they look at a realtor to find out how many homes this realtor sold, or how familiar he is with the areas? Is that something so important, or is it just fine to just contact any local realtor in that particular area, or just contact the person that's on the flyer when you're going to look at a home?
I think it's absolutely crucial to look at the expertise of the realtor, right? And if you haven't sold, say, 25 homes, it's hard to be aware of the issues that could occur. It's hard to be aware of, you learn by trial and error. So like my first 25 deals, I had a mentor looking over everything. So in the MLS, when I first started selling real estate in 2004, the majority of my deals did not say my name. They said Derek Oy, right? And Derek Oy was my mentor. And so Derek Oy's eyes were on everything that I did, because I didn't want to be in a situation where, just because I wanted to earn a certain amount of money, I put someone's largest, most valuable possession at risk. There's a very low barrier of entry to get a real estate license, very low. I got my real estate license without a GED. I didn't step foot in my senior year of high school.
I remember your story.
That's crazy. You mean to tell me you don't have to have a high school diploma, even a GED, to go ahead and take the steps to hold on to someone's most valuable transaction of their life? That is insane.
The most important for them.
So without a shadow of a doubt. Now, let's say your friend has their license. You want to give your friend a shot. Okay, well, is there a partner? Do they have a partner who has at least sold 25 homes, right? I've sold over 1,000 homes.
Wow.
So when you've sold over 1,000 homes, there are very few things that I can read things before they've even occurred, right? I can sense things before it's even happened.
Well, another important thing when it comes to reading those documents is anything that might have to do with the property. So you had mentioned previously about foundational issues, or what if that property, through home inspection or through pest, there might be something
Crazy
that's
termites.
crazy termites or something along that line. So we want to make sure that you're knowledgeable in that. And a new realtor may not be aware of to look in this corner for this or to look, outside for this. So
I will say a realtor could have 9 million referrals. At the end of the day, what a buyer also has to understand is that it's their home that they're going to live with for who knows how long. And it's up to them to find out every inch of the property that they possibly can. Right? A realtor's duties really are to get you into escrow, to align you with the right referrals, termite, inspection, plumber, roofer,
right,
chimney specialist, electrician, but they're just aligning you with those people. You still have, and then they need to make sure that they get all the disclosures and present those to you. Well, what if the buyer filled out something and said there were permits,
right,
and there's not permits? What if, the buyer said that that the pool was a saltwater pool and it ended up not being? You still have to quadruple check everything
now
to make sure that it's the right place.
Yes.
Now, with that being said, what type of protection does the borrower actually get? Let's say that person says it's a saltwater pool, and then we find out it's not.
Right.
After the fact. Or is that something we would test beforehand? Who does that fall on?
So in the residential purchase contract, you basically have an agreement that in the event of anything occurring where there was non-disclosure, that you're going to go to mediation, right? There's mediation, there's arbitration, there's all these different steps that if something goes wrong, you and the buyer are going to work it out through mediation, through arbitration. And so things can occur in a real estate transaction where it's not fun, right? And the only way to really protect yourself as a buyer is to make sure that you do all of your own research. Right. That's really the only way. If my job here is to properly advise a buyer, the realtor's job is really to find you the home and open escrow on a home.
Right.
The realtor many times has spent the same amount of time in the home as you have. They were there when you looked at it for 30 minutes. They hung out with you there for 3 hours during the inspector with the physical inspection, and that's it. But at the end of the day, you're buying the house. If something feels uneasy, if the chimney inspection came out and it looked fine, but for some reason you wanted to quadruple check it again, my biggest piece of advice when you're in escrow is to not remove contingencies until you have every single question answered. No matter what anybody says, I would recommend receiving what's called a notice to perform. Let's say you have 15 days on contingencies and your 15 days is up and they want you to remove all your contingencies, but you don't have an answer on how the pool was completed. You don't have an answer on some funky thing that came up on the roof. You're not sure about the plumbing because you didn't get the you didn't get the inspection back from the plumber in time. Don't remove contingencies.
So this is a great segue to walk us through the process and what those steps are.
Yeah.
So mentioning the contract and then contingencies, sometimes first-time home buyers don't really understand what those terms are. So as you actually have been introduced to this particular client, let's say they do have their pre-approval letter. Now they found you as a realtor or they've been referred to you, hopefully through us,
Yes.
of course, as a realtor source. And then from there, the next step would be what? To take them to look for properties.
Let's see how quickly we could jam through the whole process, right? Let's jam through it in 60 seconds.
Exactly.
You get qualified for $1 million.
Right.
You meet your realtor, or maybe you knew your realtor before.
Absolutely.
Your realtor shows you homes at
Beautiful
2 o'clock
homes.
in the afternoon.
Right.
Okay.
You see the home. The realtor should help you understand, does this price make sense?
Right.
Because a seller
For your
could say their
budget.
home is worth, no, does the price make sense for the market?
Oh, yes. And that too.
Right?
Of
So
So you're
course.
not overpaying
That's the
for a
most
home.
important
Okay.
part.
Yes.
How do you know that price makes sense?
Right.
You know how often a seller says, well, I want to price my home here.
True.
And I said, well,
Hold on.
I was on an appointment. I was on an appointment yesterday, and it's very clear that the home is worth 1.7 to 1.8 max, absolute max. I know this area like the back of my hand. The
Right.
seller wants 2.7. He wants $1 million more than what makes sense. And he told me, well, I met with 2 or 3 other realtors, and they said that price is fine. Now, why would a realtor say that a home is worth 2.7 million if it's really worth 1.7?
Right.
Well, because one, they don't have anything else to do, and it's kind of cool to have a listing, and you now have a marketing tool to sit at an open house and get actual buyers, and so you have this listing to sit there and use as
Right.
your lead leverage. I don't list homes that are overpriced.
Right.
I don't list homes that are just going to sit.
Exactly.
Right? Like if out of the top 100, this isn't meant to be a podcast for me to flex or anything, but
And going back.
of the top 100, I'm number 1 in Orange County for list to sales price. So there's only 2 people in the top 100 that have an over 100% list to sales price ratio, and I'm number 1. I have the highest. My list to sales price ratio is 103%.
No, I think that's a good flex.
And that
So
is.
if I do this, if I
definitely a
say
good
that your
flex.
house is worth this,
Yeah.
then it's actually probably worth this because I'm going to structure it and price it in a way that it's not going to sit. So back to the reality of real estate, many of the homes that are on the market are overpriced.
Right.
How do you know that? So you see the house at 2 o'clock. You look at it. The realtor should help you understand, is this home priced appropriately? Is it overpriced? Is it underpriced? And you have to understand materials. You have to understand the value of being on a busy street versus being on a cul-de-sac.
Absolutely.
Are you under the flight path? One block can change the school district. Is this school rated higher than this school? How much is that worth?
Right.
You know, was this a cheap flip or was this a custom home build? Is this a remodel or is this new construction?
Right.
Right? Well, the difference in
All of that
windows,
makes a
are these
difference.
Fleetwoods or are these La Cantinas? Like, there's all these different things that add value. That Zillow, Redfin, nobody could understand that besides a true professional realtor who works the marketplace.
Right.
So it's now 3 o'clock and you
Yep.
realized this house is priced right.
Yeah.
It's also the buyer's job, the buyer's agent's job, to understand the position of that deal. Has it been on the market for 3 hours and there's 4 other offers?
Right.
Has it been on the market for 4 months and there's 0 offers?
Correct.
All of those things will help you understand the next step. What's the next step? Writing an offer to win. So let's say
Yes.
you write the offer and you get your offer accepted the next day.
Right.
Now you're
What's-
in escrow.
What's a typical time period, though? Could it be 3 to 5 days? I think it would also, again, kind of
of
coming
going back and forth? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Okay.
it could be, you could, let's say it's listed for 1.3 and it's been on the market for 2 months and they don't have any offers. So
Right.
even though the value is probably 1.3, it's been on the market for a couple months.
Yeah.
So why not
Maybe there's some
see-
negotiating there that can be done.
And the listing agent told you, you know what, they're really motivated. Like,
Right.
Now, is that just something standard that most realtors are always going to tell you, oh, they're really motivated to sell, or you may want to offer just a little bit more on this deal? Is that something standard that's just like a sales thing, or how does that work?
it just depends. It depends on the skill of an agent. You know, it depends on the skill of an agent. If an agent is a Jedi and they're not going to tell you that there isn't any activity,
Absolutely.
they're going to tell you that it's been busy. I mean, we have somebody else coming at 4 o'clock.
Right.
That person could be the babysitter. Who knows?
Right.
So it depends. That's why you really need a strong buyer's agent to get into great rapport with the listing agent. Hey, what's going on this deal?
Right.
What's
Right.
the real insight? That's why it's very valuable to work with somebody who has expertise in an area
Yeah.
and has good relationships in an area.
Definitely.
Right? Because if they have good relationships in an area, they're not calling strangers.
No.
John's going to call the other John or Sally or whoever it is, and they've worked on a deal before, and they might work on a deal before again, and they're going to give each other real insight.
Well, I think that's the local expertise, and that piece is super important when that buyer is coming in and relying on you.
Yes.
And then going back to the steps, as you were saying, so now it's 3:00, you've made your offer. Now we're at the next day, and that offer has been accepted.
Countered, right? So you get a
or
counter
you
offer.
get a counter offer.
So let's say you get a
which
counter offer.
That's a term that some people have heard as well.
You write an offer, and you write an offer for 1.1, and they come back and they say, well, no, we're listed at 1.3, but we're going to come down to 1.2.
Right.
So then you sit with your realtor and you say, hey, they're asking 1.2. It's $100,000 off the price. Do you want to meet in the middle? And then your realtor says, you know what? Okay, let's go ahead and accept the 1.2, but we want them to also throw in, we want them to throw in that beautiful design within reach sectional, and we want them to throw in the fridge, and we want them to
the backyard patio stuff.
Yeah, we want them to throw in the back patio stuff. We'll do the 1.2.
Right.
For whatever it is. That could take a day, that could take 4 days.
Right.
Important to remember that every day that goes on as you're a buyer, you are risking somebody else coming in and just swooping.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right?
Now, question. Let's say, for instance, they accept your offer. We go in at the 1.2. They throw in the couch. Now, let's say in the process of course, we want to get the house inspected.
Yeah.
So as we get that inspection done, they find something wrong with the property.
Yes.
What's the step next at that point in time? Is the borrower just stuck in that contract at that point in time when they find something wrong, or is there still some kind of recourse that they can do?
So one of the things that it says in your offer, one of the things that you have to be prepared to do is you have to be prepared to put your deposit into escrow, right? What is escrow? Escrow is a mutual party that is going to look out for the best interests of the buyer and look out for the best interests for the seller, and should not be working more one or the other. They are a mutual party.
Yeah.
So how much is the deposit? Right, so the deposit is typically at the minimum 1 up to 3%.
Right.
So if you're buying $1 million home, that's $30,000. Right. So let's say you're putting 20% down on this home. You're not putting down the $200,000 right now.
Right.
You're putting down the 1 to 3% deposit, and you need to do that within 24 to 48 hours of opening escrow. You need to wire that into the escrow account.
And that's your commitment that you are telling the seller, I am ready, I want to buy this house.
If you don't send the deposit in within that 24, 48 hours, you have not sent that wire, that's the first red flag. You're not serious. That's the first red flag. And if you don't send that deposit in, well, now that's the first thing you're supposed to do. The seller can cancel on you. The seller can send you what's called a notice to perform, where it says, hey, this was the first thing you're supposed to do. You didn't do that.
Right.
And because, you've both have agreed to, let's say, a 30-day escrow.
Yeah.
Another thing in your 30-day escrow, let's say back in the day, inspection contingency periods was 17 days. Now it's 21.
Right.
That's also something you can negotiate as a buyer to make your offer more enticing.
Correct.
Let's say you said, forget the 17 days. I'm so committed. I'm going to remove all my contingencies in 12 days.
Now, can you elaborate on exactly what is a contingency?
A contingency is basically, I'm buying this home, but but I need to check all this stuff out first. I need to make sure it appraises.
Right.
Okay.
I need to make sure that I can for sure qualify for this thing. I know I have this piece of paper that said I could, but I need to also get an appraisal done.
And a home inspection.
I need to get a home inspection done. I need to check the Megan's Law website. I need to make sure I'm not next door to a sober living home. I need to make sure that there's not, 9 million
and
dogs
all of these
barking
things
next
have
door.
to be done in the 12 days or whatever that
time
period is that you've agreed to. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's very, very important. So your 1 to 3 deposit, you're going to get that back if you cancel within the 12 days, right? So is your deposit automatically at risk on day 13? No. You have to remove your contingencies. Do your contingencies passively remove? No. Right? Unless you put that in your contract. If you wrote in your contract, which nobody does, very rarely, that your contingencies passively removed, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so again, these are all things that are in the contract that you want to be aware of. But the basics are: you write an offer, you go back and forth. Your offer gets accepted. 24 to 48 hours, your wire gets sent in. Yep. The clock starts ticking from the time your offer gets accepted.
So is your deposit automatically at risk at day 13?
No, you have to sign your contingency removal, right? You might also still have questions that need to be answered. So you're going to ask for an extension on your contingency period.
Of the 13 days or the 12 days. Okay.
Within your inspection period as well, the seller owes you a set of disclosures. These disclosures need to say any improvements that they've done, any known issues that they've had, any deaths on the property. And it's a seller's job to disclose all these things.
Is it their job, or is it by law they have to do it?
By law, they have to do it. They have to give all the answers of yes, no, or I don't know.
Okay.
Yes, no, or I don't know. So the question is, if they check I don't know on plumbing, right? The buyer moves in and the plumbing is just completely destroyed and the inspector didn't catch it and it's a gigantic mess on day one. There's leaks all over the place, and buyers are like, oh, I didn't know. And the seller's like, I didn't know. And you later find out that they actually did know. 3 weeks ago, they had a plumbing company out. This receipt was found, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be a big mess. Here's the thing, though. Like, it's not like you're going to go to court the next day or go to mediation the next day or go to arbitration the next day. And it's going to be a gigantic mess.
Right.
And so difficult and so costly to get anything from that seller who might have moved out of the country.
Right.
So
those inspections
there
that
are
you
these
are
things
doing
in place, but the bottom line as a buyer, there's only so much your realtor knows. He found the house. There's only so much that even the inspector knows. You have to quadruple make sure everything. When you remove contingencies, you got to really make sure. I'm good.
Okay.
Right.
I'm good.
I'm buying this house.
Yeah, I'm buying the house.
So
no matter what.
So now we've gotten it pre-approved. We've got the pre-approval. We found our realtor. We found the house.
Yes.
We basically got the contract, and now we've signed on the dotted line. We're in the process, and now we've gotten rid of our contingencies because we've gotten our inspection.
Let's say you haven't, though, because it's day 8, and there's a bunch of stuff wrong with the house. So what do you do? So let's talk about this really quick because this is important. Day 8, the plumbing shot. Did you know that? Did it say that in the property description when you wrote the offer? No. It said beautiful 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It didn't say that the plumbing was from the early 1900s.
With a spa underneath the house.
You didn't know that. You also didn't know that some of the windows don't close properly, right? You also didn't know that the stove doesn't work. None of this was disclosed to you when you wrote the offer and you agreed to the price at $1.2 million, and we just found all these things out.
Do you have like a set list of inspectors that you have come to the property? For example, a roof inspector, a plumber, someone for the drain, whatever it might actually be.
So plumbing is like a guaranteed one. I always recommend a plumber comes in and they put the camera in the drain.
Yes.
You got to do that. Usually the inspector does not do that.
Why would a customer want that done?
Because you can have cracks in the plumbing that there's no way an inspector is going to find. Right? You can find that the plumbing is highly deteriorated. There's no way, unless you put that camera in there, there's no way for anybody to know.
No.
Now let's talk dollars wise. Let's say, for instance, the pipes are cracked.
Yep.
And they didn't know. How expensive could that potentially be to the buyer?
At a minimum, to completely have to redo the plumbing, I mean, depending on if you use PEX or if you go copper, I mean, but it is going to be a minimum expense, at least if it's a 1,800 square foot home, at least around $10,000 to $12,000. So
we haven't removed our contingencies at this point.
So you are going to now submit what's called a request for repair.
Okay.
And you're going to say, thank you, buyer. I'm still in love with the home.
Right.
Seller, I'm still in love with the home. But I need this plumbing fixed. I'm going to need a credit of $10,000. I'm going to need a new stove. because I don't want it fixed. This stove is shot. I'm gonna need $2,000 for the stove. And do you have some faulty windows? And some of these windows I'm gonna have to replace these. I'm gonna need $25,000. I'm gonna need $25,000.
Now, do they have to give?
Nope, they don't have to do a thing.
Wow.
They don't have to do a thing. Now, usually when you're getting a loan, one of the things that you did request was what's called Section 1 termite. That was already in the contract. Why do you need Section 1 termite? Section 1 termite is basically existing termite damage.
Yes.
Right? Not necessarily future. That is this current existing damage. You need a termite company to come in and sign off on this. Yep, we have repaired.
Right.
This home is clear of termites. So it's Section 1 termite.
Yes.
Now, so it's very important that in your offer, like let's talk about this, backtrack a little bit and talk about the offer. What does the offer have? The offer has your purchase price. I'm going to buy the home for this much. It has your down payment. This is what I'm putting down. It has your deposit. I'm going to do the full 3%. It has
before you go to, so that deposit, did that deposit money come off of the purchase price, or how does that work?
The deposit is off of the purchase price.
Okay.
Yeah. So right in your offer, it says the names on the offer, or your LLC, single person, married person, whoever it is, it has your name on the offer. It has the purchase price. It has your escrow period. I'm going to close in 21 days. I'm going to close in 30 days. I'm going to close in 60 days. So names on the offer, purchase price, the amount of the escrow period, 30 days, 45, 60 days, contingency period. I'm going to remove all my contingencies in 12 days or 17 days or 4 days. Who knows what it is? Any inclusions. I want you to leave all the TVs. I want you to leave the couch. I want you to leave if it's bolted to the property and connected to the property, it's typically staying. So for example, with TVs, it's a fine line, because when you look at flat screen TVs, the flat screen TV is not bolted to the property.
The mount is.
The mount is.
Oh, very interesting.
Right?
Yes.
So
the assumption
price,
would be that the
price, escrow period, deposit, down payment, inclusions, and contingency period. Are you asking for termite? So all those things are in the offer. And now we're at day 8, and you said, I need $25,000. And the seller says, no way.
not going to do it.
We had a backup offer, blah, blah, blah. You go back and forth. Okay, fine. We'll do 12. And then also the realtors could say, hey, I didn't want this deal to fall apart. Will you do 2 and I'll do 2? Okay, great. Let's work together here. Sellers doing.
Let's figure it out. Let's make it work.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Sellers doing $12,000. Buyer's agent said, I'll throw in 2. Seller's agent said, I'll throw in 2. Great. We're all happy. Let's remove contingencies. And you remove contingencies on time.
Buyer says, I'm buying this house.
Now you're committed.
Yes.
Now you're committed.
Right.
Now we're in it.
Now you're in it. And from that period on, what is basically occurring is the buyer is going through the motions with the lender to make sure that the loan is fully ready to go, and they're doing all that behind the scenes things with the lender. And about a week or so before you're going to close escrow, the buyer, as long as they did not go and lease a Ferrari, I've had deals fall apart because a buyer went and leased a couch before. Back in the day when my average sales price was like $550,000.
Right.
Somebody leasing a couch or a car or whatever has now affected their debt to income ratio. It has affected their credit, and they are not the same person they were when they first got approved for the loan.
Exactly.
So
now that definitely is going to lead me to the next question that can be a little touchy. How does that realtor make his money? What's in it for you? So
a realtor's commission is determined in the MLS, and that is set by the seller, right? When the home was listed and they sat with their listing agent, the listing agent agreed to a certain commission, which back in the day it was 6%. Now on average it's usually 5%. So in that split between the listing agent and the buyer's agent, and it's right there in the MLS. So the buyer's agent already knows. The buyer pays nothing to their agent. The buyer's agent receives all their compensation from the seller.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where when you were saying we can do 2 and then you'll do 2. So that's how.
Yeah, that'll come out of escrow.
Okay. So that's how that situation would work. Okay. That makes sense. All right.
Yeah, and so then you've now gone through the motions. It's day 20, now day 25. It's time to deposit the balance of that $200,000, right?
Right.
So it's a $1.2 million purchase, whatever it is. You already have your 3% there.
Yes.
That you've deposited.
Yeah.
So you've already had that 30 grand. So now there's about $170,000 plus closing costs,
Right.
escrow fees, title fees, any loan fees. What can all of those escrow fees be? Well, again, to backtrack a bit, you want to know that in the very beginning, right? And your lender, as well as the escrow company, as well as your realtor, can help you understand with a net sheet, what are the additional fees? Typically, loan fees can be in the 1% to 2%. It could all be worked out in your loan package as well. But you're going to have escrow and title fees.
Right.
Can be about 1.3% as well. So on $1 million purchase, there can be about $10,000 in fees that the buyer is going to need to pay.
And are those fees one time? They occur one time, or are they fees that repeat?
No, this
or
is the
just
one
the one time.
Yep.
So you just pay it to buy the house.
That's it. Yep. Okay. And so all the funds get deposited in. Now it's that 72 hours before all the final steps, and then the sweet spot is when my title guy calls me or gal, and they let me know, hey, title has recorded. The deal has funded. So typically the deal funds. The loan got fully approved. The deal funded. After the deal funds, many times on the same day. The deal funds at 11, then you're going to get the same day recording. Right. If the deal funds at 3, then it's probably going to record the next day.
So question for you. So when you say record, what does that mean? Title.
Yep.
What is title? Because
so title is the insurance company that really maintains and guards the names on title of the home, right? So when title records, it shifts from this name to this name.
So the ownership changes.
The ownership changes.
So it's kind of like, I mean, I guess essentially it's kind of like the title on a car. So if I sell a car and then you got to sign off on it, and then my name goes onto it, and your name comes off of it. Oh,
money.
Okay.
First I got to give you the money.
Right.
There's the money.
Okay.
And simultaneously, it all magically happens. You know, and this occurs. Escrow and title, they're working together to make sure that this all works together in unison.
And this is considered closing.
It's your closing.
And closing.
After that,
I
call you and I say, I have been waiting so long for 2 years. We've been talking about you buying a home for 2 years. It finally happened. You got connected with the pros at loanDepot. I can't believe they got you this rate. You were working with my top agent at Case. So, they found you an off-market home. That's one of the number one things a good agent, a good buyer's agent is going to do. They're going to find you off markets.
Yes.
It's the number one thing that I would recommend a buyer asks a buyer's agent is, tell me about your expertise.
Well, and that goes
off
back
markets.
And that goes back to the value of having a realtor and what is the purpose of having a realtor on your side versus.
Well, the question is, why would you want to have an off market property? Well, what's that all about?
Yeah.
Right. There are properties in every community that are available off market. They're not on the MLS.
Okay. And now would a borrower know that would be something that realtor that you look for with the experience, he would be able or she would be able to point out to you, hey, here's some properties that are listed. Here are some properties that aren't listed.
I would say honestly, maybe 10% of realtors even have these connections. My firm, Case, is definitely at the top in terms of doing off-market properties. We've done more off-market deals in the last 24 months than the majority of agents out there. So there's specific strategies to do to find these properties. which anybody can do, but just most realtors rely on the MLS to find the properties that they're looking for. We love doing off-market deals. And so when you're presenting a buyer with an off-market deal, they're not competing with anybody. Usually it's off-market.
Yeah.
You might be your buyer's agent, especially if they're at case, quite possibly could be the only person who even knew that was available.
What a luxury.
We just closed this deal in Laguna Beach, and we knew this family told us what they were looking for, and we just happened to have that in our back pocket. They wanted a home on a specific street with an unobstructed ocean view with a pool, and it was on a cliffside. Very difficult to find a home that has a pool on this cliffside because it cost $1 million just to build the pool. They wanted a specific design, and we just happened to have that in our back pocket. So they were able to buy it, not competing with anybody else. And they were just like, how did you guys even know about this?
See, it's all of this knowledge that I think is so important because it just goes all the way back. What the importance of having a realtor, having that knowledge and everything else versus you just going out and try to strike this deal on your own. Yeah. There's absolutely no way that a person would know all of these different things. I can definitely see the importance in having a realtor.
Well, here's the worst thing you can do as a buyer. You see a home on Zillow or Redfin, right? And Zillow and Redfin make it very difficult to actually find the listing agent, right? They trick you. They say contact the realtor or contact realtor and blah, blah, blah. And they put that name and number very bold and very easy to click on. That realtor, 99.9% of the time, actually has never even been to the house. So you're clicking on a number to try to get information from somebody about a home, and they've never been to that house, right? So how does it work? Well, a real estate agent will pay Zillow, will pay Redfin money to pop up in a certain zip code, right? I used to do this back in the day. I don't do it anymore. But back in the day, when I was trying to get my start, I would pay Zillow to be the go-to person. There's a certain amount of market share, a certain amount of clicks that are available. And I would say, here you go, Zillow, help me. I'm trying to get my start. Here's $5,000 to be known in 92660. So then I would get all these calls in from realtors, and they'd say, hey, I was calling about the home on, Galaxy Drive. Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that property well.
Yeah. I never even...
No, know nothing about it.
I lived in Rancho Cucamonga.
Right. I
was just trying to get... And so this is who you're typically working with. You're working with... Well, it's not giving you what you want. Right. What did you want? You clicked on that because you thought that was the person who knew about the property. They make it very difficult to go in and actually find their realtor, and they use the smallest font on the planet to actually put the realtor, the true listing agent's name. The worst thing you could possibly do is click on that button. That's the worst thing you could do.
So Keven, tell me, the market right now, is it a buyer's market or is it a seller's market right now? How hot is it right now for people? Is this a good time to buy?
It's definitely a good time to buy if you are motivated, if you are qualified, and if you are prepared, right? You have to be motivated, qualified, and prepared and interested, right? You might be in a situation that it makes more sense for you to continue renting. It makes more sense for you to live with family. So it's different for every person. You can't even say if it's a good time to buy or not a good time to buy, because every single person's situation is different, right? Now, let's say that you want to wait, right? Now, if you're waiting to buy a home because, well, the question is, why would you be waiting to buy a home? Well, I'm waiting to buy a home because the interest rates are higher than they were 2 years ago. Okay, so here's the interesting thing we have going on right now. Interest rates are in the 6s and the 7s and in the 8s. When I bought my home in 2018, I got a 6.7% interest rate, and that was just normal at the time.
Right.
And then we went into real estate Disneyland, where the rates hit, like, I know people who had rates in the ones.
Yes.
Wow.
Right? Why did that have to occur? Right? That had to occur to really shift things and make sure we don't go into this recession. And so rates went in this 1, 2s, and 3s, and we got to hang out in this real estate Disneyland where we all got so spoiled. Well, what was also true for a buyer at that time? I stopped working with buyers in 2021. I didn't work with buyers in 2021.
And why was that?
I had my team deal with that pain. That was so painful. I worked with 1, maybe 2 buyers in that whole year, and it was the most painful experience. I have a buyer that I worked with who was a professional skateboarder, champion, about to compete in the Olympics, saw this home he wanted for $2 million. We wrote an offer for $2.5 million. We agreed to wear the family, a photo of the family on his T-shirt in the Olympics. Like,
Wow.
if he ever has a child, we agreed to name that child after the seller. We still didn't get the house. It was so painful. So if you're a buyer and you're motivated, you're ready, you want a home, you can afford it, but you're going to wait until the interest rates drop. Well, I got news for you. When the interest rates drop, be prepared for a whole bunch of more buyers to come in. So 2020, 21, 22, you wrote an offer, get in line. Right now, you write an offer, get a home. So there is a lot less, there's still competition out there because inventory is very low.
Absolutely.
So a home I just listed in Dover Shores, we had 7 offers on it in the first 72 hours. We closed $600,000 over the list price.
$600,000.
It was on Candlestick Lane. We closed $600,000 over the list price. So for beautiful, special homes, there's still going to be a lot of competition because there's low inventory. Are there less buyers right now? There's definitely less buyers. When the rates drop again, which they will, there's going to be more competition. Date the rate, marry the home. Like if you're motivated and you're qualified, get the home.
Exactly.
But you have to be motivated, you have to be qualified, and you have to be confident. The only way you're going to have confidence is to begin exploring with professionals. If you don't know, that's okay, but you should still be in the mix learning and getting an education, improving your credit, building your savings, improving your the way you file your taxes, learning and studying the market,
the
following
educational
the landscape,
piece of all of it.
going to open houses.
Another question for you though, Keven, is what is the difference between a buyer's market and a seller's market?
That's a good question. I think a seller's market is when prices are high and they're going to get multiple offers, right? A buyer's market is when prices are low and you're going to be able to get a deal, right? So I sold a fair amount of real estate during the recession, right? 2008, 2009, during the recession, where a home would be listed for this and you could ask for the sun, the moon, the stars, throw in your car, pay for my closing costs, paint the house before. You could say whatever you wanted because there was hardly anybody buying. It was brutal back then. But guess what was different? The interest rates were back. The interest rates back then is like, I think they were even higher than where they are now. So it plays out still. It's like when prices are lower, interest rates can be typically higher. When prices are higher, interest rates can be lower, and so you just have to look at your own unique situation.
So it's safe to say when high, then the prices of properties are low, that's going to be considered the buyer's market. So that would be the ideal time to try and jump on a property.
It could be, but here's one thing to be aware of. Are there extraordinary deals out there if you're focused on them? I live in a neighborhood where there's golf course homes, right? And the golf course homes are a bit pricier. And then there's a couple homes away from the golf course, right? Typically, homes only hit the $3 million price point if they were on the golf course. While recently, homes started hitting the $3 million price point off of the golf course. Wow. So homes are starting to increase at a higher amount. Well, 6 months ago, I found an opportunity off market, and I bought a home for 1.150-ish, right? Totally off market. It needed some work. So now we're fixing that house up, and we'll be putting that home back on the market in the 1.8 range. If you were a buyer who was focused and looking for these off markets, there's great deals to be had. Another example, there's a community called College Park in Costa Mesa. Vivian from my team has been farming that neighborhood. She met a seller who was at risk in some pre-foreclosure situations, and she was able to lock up that deal. Typically in that neighborhood, $1,000 a square foot is what's commonly seen once it's remodeled, and it's a 1,500 square foot home. So what's the value there once remodeled? 1.5. Vivian was able to secure that home for her buyer for $1,050,000.
Wow.
So if you, again, off market, if that property went on the market, which the seller didn't have time to do, that house would have sold for probably $1.3 million. So if you have a good realtor who can find you off markets, then you might be able to find an opportunity that, you're getting the best of both worlds. You're buying at a low price. Yes, the rate's higher now, but where are you going to be in 6 months if you can shift the rate, and now on top of that you have equity?
Keven, that has this whole entire meeting has been so informative. I mean, making sure that you get the right realtor, making sure you team up with the right lender. These are all going to be key things in getting your dream home. Right now is still as viable of a time to purchase a property.
Absolutely.
Regardless of if we even wait for a property, but right now is still a good time.
Could be rental property. Could be land. It could be real estate. To me, will always be the number one and safest, most secure way to build financial freedom. So, if it's not your personal residence, maybe you could be exploring pockets in the country where there's great opportunities for Airbnbs, investment properties. I think it's extremely smart to just be wise about opportunities for you to own land.
That's huge.
Yes.
Well, more than anything, we want to tell you thank you so much for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Truly. Once again, everyone, this is Homeschool. Please make sure that you tune in with us again. We have so many episodes coming, so much information, so many different people that's going to keep you informed on how you can own your first home. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.